Hello, everyone. Welcome to our podcast. We have another episode today. My name is Annie, and we have our co-host, Andre.
Hi, everyone.
And we have our guest, Paul, on the line.
Greetings.
So today we will be talking to Paul, who has a super exciting job that I'm very jealous of. Paul is a game producer and also a product manager for the newly released game VALORANT. That for the folks of you who play games out there, which is pretty exciting. But he has a really interesting background, and his story is just very, very. I think it's very good for the young people to hear how he came to where he is today. So to start, Paul, can you tell us what do you do in simple terms?
In simple terms,
what is game production?
Game production is a role where you help organize and prioritize what the right things are to work on to bring a game to your audience, whether that's helping engineering organize and prioritize their work, or game design or art. Producers are the people who help kind of lead the team and get the work all done and scheduled and out the door, because making games is very complicated. It requires a lot of people from a lot of disciplines working together. There's a lot of communication and overhead. And when you're launching on a PC or a console or on mobile, they all have different specifications that you as a team need to be able to hit. And so producers kind of help bring those criteria to the team so that you know what to make. So it's a bit of project management. It's a bit of psychology. It's a bit of being a coach and a cheerleader.
Yeah, I was gonna say it sounds a lot like project management, which maybe it's more common for the people out there. Yeah. It's like navigating between different departments and getting them to work together towards the launch or the release of the next build or something like that, right?
I think maybe the term project manager is more common to us, right? Because it's more familiar in our industry, what we do, like typically IT, right? But producer is more like on the creative side. Do you have somebody who works as a project manager in the game industry? There are.
And so production is a family of roles. So there's project managers who, I think, as you were saying, in IT, you have more kind of set goals, set things for a quarter or a time period. You want to deliver, infrastructure for the company, whether that's laying cable or, ordering devices and rolling them out, whatever needs to be done, right? So those are definitely projects, and there are people who do that. There's software development managers who are your typical, it's not typical at all. I don't know why I said typical, but I would say it's more traditionally, how do you manage complex software development and deliver and release updates to that development live and over time? And centrally you have that at video game studios, whether it's IT solutions or central services. And what I mean by that is your account system, your refund system, your way to manage your servers and allocate servers to hardware over in different countries and whatnot. So there's development managers who help teams to kind of do more engineering, business to business type of work. And then there's also game development managers who are more on the software of making the games itself, of which several producers can do that role. I work on an engineering team myself, so I have to do some of that work as well. And then there's production, and this is more traditional game production.
Sorry, Paul, I think you're a bit quiet because you moved your mic away.
Is that better? Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. Do you want me to start over? Or
no. Just continue.
Okay, cool. And so game production, there are elements that can be more creative production. So this could be character creation, map design, level design. There are producers who work with creatives and help create processes around that flow. Because the way that you need to think about and solve problems for, let's say, a character or a world or a map can be very different from working on a PvP matchmaking system, which is going to be more abstract to a player, but from an engineering perspective, is rooted in rule sets and scaling tons of players all hitting computers at the same time. So there are different types of project managers, software development managers, producers who work on that stuff. But like I said, we're a family. So you're going to have people from all those type of roles working together to work on a game together, because you can't do it without each other. So if I had to kind of simplify it, they're all like different martial arts.
Mm-hmm.
There's just a different focus. Taekwondo's focused on kicking, right? Judo's focusing on energy and grapples.
Mm-hmm.
So they're all just kind of different applications of some of the same principles. But at the end of the day, you're helping people create something, getting it organized and getting it out in either case. So
I know that in the beginning, Annie mentioned that she's very jealous of your position, but recently both of us discovered that she's not very good with numbers.
Yep.
So I'm wondering.
Well, I don't think it's recently.
So she knew for a long time. I just discovered recently.
Okay.
But my question is, can you be a producer that doesn't have to care about money and you just care about the creative things and the creative process?
Typically, not traditionally. Mm-hmm. And what you need to do is, what we mean by care for money is really you're managing your resources. And money is just a resource. People is a resource, time is a resource, money is a resource. And so you may be given a set of criteria to deliver something, and that might be a certain timeline with a certain budget, and you as a producer need to figure out how to get it done with those constraints. And so in production, you have to be mindful of those things. If you are making something amazing and beautiful, but you run out of money, well, you can't bring it to market. If you're making something amazing and beautiful, but you need way more time and you miss your market window, well, that's no good, and etc. So it is important to be mindful of budget and to be adept with numbers. But I mean, beyond algebra, I mean, using an Excel spreadsheet, like you don't need to be someone who masters calculus for managing a budget, just like we all have to manage our own personal finances. You're just doing that for a project. And so I wouldn't say it's particularly difficult. It's just a matter of applying detail.
Have to have concept and be aware of all the things that's going to happen.
Right. And just be able to understand what a good price is for something and what a too expensive price is for something, whether it's hiring someone to help you or contracting people to help you or whatever. You have to be mindful of that stuff, and it's all learnable.
Mm-hmm.
It's all learnable.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny that you mentioned that it's like managing our personal finances. So going back to when we're discussing like what is common, what is usual, I think that managing personal finances is not that common, maybe for you and me, but many people don't know about that.
Unfortunately, I think as we all learn to adult, those things become more important. And I'm 38. It took me a long time to really put some importance on that type of stuff. But in essence, it's really understanding flow, input, output, where things are going month to month, week to week, and how you manage that appropriately. And
everybody, welcome Personal Finances #1 with Paul.
well, you gotta remember, Andre, we had another episode where Cameron was filing taxes at 12, so maybe our audience is good at it, which is better than us. I was going to ask, so what actually happens in the day-to-day for you? Like, how does it look like?
Well, so I'll describe some tactics. It's going to be more like day-to-day meetings, and then I'll describe why we do those things. Yeah. So a typical day starts with morning stand-up, and that is I'm with my development teams, and they're giving updates on what they're doing. And the updates aren't just to tell me where the project's at. The updates are for them to communicate with each other as developers and say, hey, here's where I'm at, here's what I'm working on, am I blocked? And what you do when you're blocked is really use that moment to be like, oh, can we help each other out? And usually people do that asynchronously. They reach out to each other directly. But that is a time to kind of like make the team know, hey, I'm trying to solve this problem, but I need help. Or, hey, can someone review my code? Or, hey, I have this new design of a character or a VFX pass for something.
What does it mean, VFX pass?
Visual effects. Mm-hmm. And what that usually means in games is particle effects. And particle effects are what you would see when to explain to a player what they're seeing on screen, how is the action being portrayed. So if you imagine Street Fighter, right, when Ryu throws a punch, there's an impact of some sort, and you'll see a little image on the screen that lets you know I made an impact. That could be a visual effect, which is probably accompanied with a sound effect, which needs to be coded and programmed at the right time by a designer and engineer to make it all come to life. This simple motion is the result of like 4 or 5 different teams or types of disciplines working together to make that happen. And
then what does the pass mean?
Pass means a version. Like a pass, like pass 1, pass 2. My first pass at my paper, it's a revision.
Like an iteration.
Iteration. That's exactly what it means, an iteration.
Okay.
So that's the type of stuff we do. So my day starts with that, and then I move on to a leadership meeting with the leaders of my project. So I'm the lead producer, but I also work with a lead engineer, a lead designer, a lead QA analyst, a lead insights analyst, and we discuss kind of like the meta problems or meta things we're doing on the project and update each other on what we're doing. And then I usually roll into either review meetings per discipline, or I'm working on presentations to give to my leadership group, so I need to keep them updated on where the project's at, so I'm really doing that.
What does a review meeting mean? Does it mean where you get to sit and the other people show you what they created?
Correct. So on a feature I'm working on, I'll see here's the design might have an iteration they want to go over, and I'll sit in on the meeting and listen and hear them discuss it, and I'll give some feedback if it's warranted. Most of the time I'm pretty hyper aligned with what my designers want to do, because part of my job is setting goals. So early on, before they start designing solutions to problems, because that's what game design is. It's designing solutions to people interaction problems in software. I meet with the lead designer and we go over the goals of what we're trying to solve. And once we're super aligned on those goals, the design team goes and creates solutions to those. So I'm just seeing the progress in those review meetings and saying, yes, these are meeting the goals that we agreed on is the right thing to make for players, etc. So those meetings like that. I do a lot of one-on-ones. These are like individual meetings with team members. So over the course of a 2-week period, I'll probably meet with at least half of my team for half an hour. So I meet with an engineer or an artist or whoever just to get a health check on what they're doing.
Maybe you guys should compare how you do your one-on-ones, because Annie is also a team manager. I'm wondering if you guys talk about the same things. Is it about like your future? What do you talk about?
So with my direct reports, the people who directly report to me, I tend to break it up into 3 areas. One is career mentorship and growth, and how I can help them with that and go over what their goals are for the next 90 days and see how they're doing. 2 is, we just talk about problems on the project, and not just like this is a problem, with challenges. Hey, I'm trying to solve this. Here's how we should approach it. And then the other third of it is usually how you doing as a human being. Just a relationship.
Pretty similar.
Are you saying you're not working with robots?
I am saying I'm not working with robots. That is correct.
Got it.
And then for people I don't directly manage but who are on my team, it's really getting their feel of how they think the project is going, what are their biggest challenges, what information do they need to be successful, what type of things are confusing, and really just understanding how they're getting along on the project and kind what I can do.
Setting the stage right and to provide the right environment for them to work.
Correct.
Yeah.
The phrase I use a lot is I need to set my team up for success.
Yep.
And that's a lot of upfront work that we do as project leaders to make sure that the team understands what's the right thing to work on, and if they're finished with something, what's the next thing they go on to. And I work with the team leads, engineers, artists to always have that kind of planned out for at least 2 to 3 weeks ahead of time. But sometimes you need clarification or need an opinion. And I, as the project lead, I provide that information so that they can best know what to focus on. And sometimes I kind of talk about what's happening 2 to 3 months ahead of time for them. Because a lot of the team members are kind of focused on, what are they doing that week,
Yeah.
And so they'll go, what's the horizon look like? And part of my job is understanding that big horizon and being able to explain to the team members why we're making the decisions we're making week to week. So yeah, stuff like that. That's the majority of it, I'd say.
And you're now working. We just mentioned this is today's June 5th. So VALORANT just launched 3 days ago. It's been a hectic week for you. Maybe it's a little bit hard to think about it in a more relaxed term, but what is the best part about working on the VALORANT team? I know it's been quite a bit of.
I've been on the team for about a year and a half. So the game has been in development for a very long time, and being able to be on the team to help get it out once and for all to everyone was an awesome experience, because you go from having an idea of what's cool, and then you're playing something together as a team and you think it's cool, but that's your opinion as a developer, and we're all craftspeople who we think we have good taste and have an understanding, but at the end of the day, we're not the player base. We're not the entire player base. So there's something magical when you put it in front of actual players and have them experience the product, the game, and they give you their feedback of what's working, what's not working, and seeing what things that you guessed would be fun, seeing that come to light, seeing what things you thought would be fun are actually not fun, and you learn that and make adjustments. That's amazing. Seeing people be happy with the things that you created is an amazing feeling. And seeing people get frustrated with the thing you make helps you understand what you can do to make it better. And there's just something about watching something go from an abstract idea to a tangible reality that people can interact with that I find personally amazing. And that's why I like game development. But yeah, seeing something go from a sketch on a piece of paper or just an idea in a conversation actually become a tangible piece of software that people can interact with and enjoy is awesome.
I know exactly what you mean. When I was working on my first startup, I was trying to create this explainer video, kind of like animation to explain what my startup is about. And that's what I really love. First you have the idea, you put it on the paper, it's just words. And then you have an idea how it should animate, what should be shown on the screen. But then once you finally see the result with the voiceover and everything, it's wow, it's you brought something to life.
Right. Yeah. It's cool. It's really cool.
But you guys launched a beta before June 2nd. So I'm wondering, and you definitely got a lot of feedback during that time. I'm pretty sure it was also part of stress testing, maybe your servers.
Yeah, absolutely.
What has changed? Because you mentioned that for you, it's the moment is impressive when you put it out in front of the people. But you already did that before. So is this just the next level when you really put it out in front of everyone? Or what has changed between the beta release and now the official release for everyone?
So at a high level, it's about stability and understanding the behavior of the players in the software, in the game. What are the things they're into? What are the things they're choosing to do? What are the things they're choosing not to do? So that gives us a lot of information to help stabilize and optimize for a global release. Because even though a closed beta, and to your point, the closed beta was a really big moment for us because that was the first time the greater world experienced it. But it wasn't everyone. It wasn't available to everyone. It had to be smaller so that we don't overload things and we can learn week to week what our true capabilities were. And so you don't get to see its true potential until the worldwide launch. And so being able to go wide where anyone can access it and has to go through the entire flow from the website to the download to the patching to setting up your player name to going to the tutorial and seeing what they do, that you get a whole fresh batch of humans who have not been exposed to it in a lot of ways, and you get to compare the difference between the two groups, and that's fascinating. So the launch makes it feel real. Even though the closed beta was real, launch means it is the commitment.
You're all in.
They're all in. It is a marathon. Closed beta, in theory, a closed beta of any type of product can go on indefinitely. You can continue to delay it and keep it focused on a smaller region or a certain amount of users until you're ready to go. And so a launch is very much a commitment that we have solved what we believe the foundational problems are for a launch, and we're ready to go and service it 24 hours a day forever. And that's big. But in terms of just changes, I think there's a lot of gameplay changes that were made. We announced a new map, a new character. So there are more things to do, more things to play. We announced, way more cosmetic content that, oops. Did you guys hear that motorcycle?
A little bit, yeah.
No, it's fine. I can edit that out.
I live on a main street, so a lot of cars go by my house. But we were just a lot of things that we were planning to do but weren't ready for prime time. We were able to reveal to the world. We did a character select menu with animations in it, where you see when you collect your character, you see them act out a bit of who they are. And we did not have that before that because we were. It takes a lot of time to animate
particles,
animation, sound effects, optimization on devices and graphics card. It takes a lot. Memory optimization. So you get to reveal a bit more, and so the full featured set happened at worldwide launch, and that was very, very enjoyable. And the team feels really accomplished because we've been doing this working from home remotely for the past 3 months. So this is, launching anything is difficult. Launching things from home remotely, that's even more difficult. Yeah. That's some part of the journey for us. It's been a wild few months.
Did you guys have any party, or is it more like more work after you launched?
We took a moment to celebrate. We all got on a giant Zoom call and did the cheers and some speeches, and when we can all get together in person again, we will. Until then, we took some time to hang out as a team and took some time to play the game and just relax a bit. And people are going to be rolling on to vacations over the next few weeks coming on, so it's really nice.
I want to speak for the other players out there for myself. When you said the world is can download it and play it, but it is not compatible with Mac. And I'm very excited to play it, but I can't, given I don't have Windows. Is there any plans into releasing it into Mac anytime soon? Or is that secret you can't tell us?
Not for me to say.
All right. Hopefully soon then.
Well, you can
the good news is you can run it if you were to procure a PC. It runs on very, very, very forgiving hardware settings. So I imagine if you know someone with the PC, it most likely can be played on it.
I think I probably might just buy some product and run it on Mac.
Yeah, you can just.
I think you could dual boot.
Yeah.
If you install Windows, you can dual boot run it.
Yeah. Should be fine. Yeah.
Okay. The mic again, Paul. A little bit.
Got it. Sorry. It's when I go for my water.
I know. No worries. Yeah. No worries. So you mentioned that you joined the VALORANT team only like 1.5 years ago, and the game started like 5 years ago. But I'm pretty sure you probably know from your teammates about the origins of this idea. Do you know what inspired the team to go into VALORANT?
I know the lead designer, Trevor Romoleski, and our game director, Joseph Ziegler, and a producer at the time named Stephen Lim. They all talked about what are some different genres of games that Riot could try, and what type of games would they want to play. And all three of them were Counter-Strike fans. It was released in the early 2000s and had a particular style of play.
I remember.
You remember. Right, there's a certain way that game was played, a certain way movement felt, shooting felt, the way the gun recoil worked. Counter-Strike in general has evolved into Counter-Strike Global Offensive, CSGO, and that has created its own, it's kind of evolved from the original framework. So, anywho, they were bigger fans of that elder version than where it had evolved into, and so they thought, what would be interesting to find ways to improve or differentiate from that core set and make something new, and that's where they started working together. And it was a very small team for many years, and over time, as they continued to prototype and find the fun and kind of master how to build that, the team continued to grow and get explored and get worked on. And by the time I came on, they had been in development a long time. The core gameplay had been solid for quite a while, but it was really about, figuring out the final direction for the way the character should look. We knew how they should play, but they really needed a visual style and investment in figuring out who are they from a personality point of view and all that. So I came on to help that team figure some of that stuff out early last year, and then transitioned to a secret feature team, which I cannot talk about. But I was brought on to help that due to my experience on League of Legends, working on skins and champions. I had some expertise there and I was able to help that team figure some things out, and they're great. They're doing really good work. So yeah, I mean, really the net of it was small group of people decided they wanted to try it. Over time, they continued to build and invest, and it was fun. It was viable. It felt right in that it felt like an evolution or an extension of that original Counter-Strike style with the introduction of characters and abilities that created a kind of new take on the genre. And they just continued to build on that until we felt it was viable to bring it and commit to launching it.
I'm very interested maybe going against our order of the questions, but I'm really wondering if this is kind of like a Riot culture that you can assemble a small team and work on something that you think might be big later, and then once you gain the traction, company puts more resources into it.
Yeah, I think that's called an R&D pipeline, and we definitely have one of those. And so the idea is, every game should have a core thesis. It should have a core problem it's trying to solve, or innovation it's trying to bring to a space. And the prototypes are then trying to prove or disprove that thesis, and that's kind of where it begins. And so usually what can happen, especially nowadays, is anyone can pitch a product. Anyone could put together a thesis. Put together a thesis, take it to the R&D council, and say, "Hey, I'd like to, present." And they're allowed to try and allowed to kind of show through a series of gates the diligence in thinking through the opportunity, thinking through what genre, thinking through what experiments to do, who the right types of people are to work on it. What I mean by that is the expertise. Certain game designers have expertise in this genre. Certain engineers have expertise in Y problem set. So you need the right group of people to kind of come together to be able to prove that prototype quickly, and prove that fun out. And then you can kind of continue to build and invest on top of that. So that is what R&D at Riot's been like for the past few years. It didn't always used to be that way. It was a bit more ad hoc back in the day. Like, you could pitch an idea if you wanted, but the ability to get funding for it really came down to how well you're able to proposition it, and if you had the right group of people to go get it, to group up and try it. And it was much more kind of banding together on the side to figure things out. So now it's much more streamlined, which both of them have their pros and cons, but I think the diligence of the new system to me is interesting, because it really puts emphasis on thinking through what you're trying to accomplish first, kind of like on paper, before you put any investment in code and art and stuff like that. And I think that's a healthy way to do development.
So we know the game as VALORANT right now. I'm wondering, what other names did you guys consider, or did you have any code name before?
It was Project A. When we announced in October of last year, we called it Project A. But for a long time, it was called Ares. So that's Project A. And that was its code name for many, many, many years. Yeah.
You mentioned that you worked also, we will talk about this also later, like you helped design champions and skins for League of Legends. I'm wondering, who is your, like, you also played Valorant, like, who's your player on Valorant, like the agents, and is there any kind of like inspiration it drew from League of Legends? Because from the limited exposure I have, I feel like certain characters kind of feels like some League characters.
Sure. So I'll make it clear, I did not design any of the characters. So as a producer, I work on a team with designers, and ultimately the designers figure out what the mechanics are going to be for the character. It's my job to go, "Hey, I agree with you," or "Hey, consider ABC," but ultimately you need to go solve it as a designer. So just sometimes people get confused about that on League. They're like, "Oh, this guy was a producer on it. He designed it." You're like, no. This person designed it. That producer was part of the team and helped, ideas and facilitation and get it done. But a producer typically doesn't do the design itself. They help. They help. The design team on Valorant characters, some of them were League veterans, like Morello, Ryan Scott, who was a lead character designer on League of Legends. He came on to Valorant some years ago and was helping that team out. So, a lot of his direction helped shape kind of what the initial set of characters should do and should not do. And he had a good team of developers. Some were League veterans. Some were not. Some were new to Riot, and so they were the ones who kind of defined out like the character sets and what type of roles and positions they could follow, and then they would interface with the greater Valorant design team and play test and understand it. Because you have designers working on maps, you have designers working on the shooting mechanics, you have designers working on progression, and they all need to click together. So so to your question, were they inspired by League? In some ways, right? Because you have some of the same people working on it and thinking about it, but more like in general in games, there's a lot of commonalities. Like a fire person does things you expect fire to do. You throw a fireball, you expect it to burn it over time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You expect that's going to work on League, that's going to work in VALORANT, it's going to work in any game where you have a fireball, right? Yeah. So like there's common tropes in design that you see reflected, but just kind of changed for the game or the genre. And then there's like certain mechanics that just only make sense in one game versus the other, and you have to pick and choose that accordingly. So that's from the mechanic side. From the thematic side, I think again there are tropes. There are things that are common that you see in a lot of games, and the reason why games do that is to make sure some games do that, not all. Is ultimately the goal is at a glance you want to know what that character does. Right, you want to be able to understand, what do I think they do? By looking at the way they look, by the way they stand, by the whatever they have in their hand, what can I expect them to do? Because that's how you teach people to learn what to expect from the characters. And so an analogy I like to use is superheroes. A lot of superheroes, you kind of look at them and you go, oh, I kind of know what they do. I think some of the one of the, I won't say an inspiration, but something we talked about a lot was the X-Men, right? If you think of the early 90s X-Men with Colossus, Wolverine, Cyclops, you kind of look at them and you go, I think I know what they do just by looking at them. Cyclops is laser person eye. Yeah. Wolverine is
the claw person
who probably is vicious. Colossus is a person made of steel that you probably
can destroy.
Correct. So, like, I think there's some common things that you use in games to kind of inform the visual aesthetic, so that you as a player go, "Oh, I know what that does."
Yeah,
and then over time you can add more.
And Storm has dyed her hair, so
Storm has dyed her, but she has white eyes with lightning bolts. Oh, I guess she controls some type of lightning bolt, some type of weather. Yeah, and she's flying. Oh,
by the way,
I think this is pretty common in, I think, maybe the creative field, because even when, like, movie titles, I know, not in English, but when I was working in the film magazine industry, when they translate the movie titles, there's always certain way they translated it, and we, as like viewers, we're always like, oh, it's so cheesy. It's always called like blah 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 blah, and then like agent or like history, something like that. But then when I was talking to the people who's the producer of the studio, they were saying like they wanted that because they wanted audience to quickly know, and then know that, yes, that's gonna be like that kind of film, and I want to watch that. Right. So yeah, I can totally understand, like, where
it's kind of tapping into what's common as humans, what we respond to, what we've learned in pop culture to expect from. And there are times that deviate from that, and deviations are awesome. You get really creative takes on it. If you look at, right, the first Guardian of the Galaxy, when you saw the trailer for that, in my opinion, you're like, is this a comedy? Is this not? Is this a superhero movie? Is this silly? Is this cool? And then when you watched it, you're like, oh, this feels fresh, because you hadn't seen a take on space heroes kind of winking at each other and using pop music from the 70s and like comic book references. It was new. So like, I think deviations are great. Thor Ragnarok, was it Ragnarok?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the one that felt different from the other Thors.
It's the best Thor, in my opinion.
I think it was. I think it made that character more relatable, and in my opinion, and simply because everyone else kind of talked normal. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't so lofty. It was like, Thor's bored. What am I gonna do? You know what I mean? So, anyways, I digress. Like, the point is, in creative, there are times when you're establishing a base set, a debut, that you can, if you want to, use common things to help onboard people. And that's very much something we brought to the table, at least for this initial set. If you look at League, we're at over 140 characters. Nowadays, they can make whatever they want, because a lot of the base thing, Ice Person, Lysandra, Fire Person, Annie, Fire Person, Brand, Electric Bear, Volibear, like you got to get your bases covered, and you can start doing some crazy things, and so that happens naturally over time, in my opinion. So yeah.
I'm not sure if we have mentioned this, but you were the very first intern at Riot Games.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, what's the story behind this? How this happened to be? How big was the company?
Yeah. I was employee number 6, so the company was not very big. I was in graduate school at the University of Southern California from 2005 to 2008, and in the late summer of 2006, I had been looking for internships. In fact, I'd started looking for internships in like January of 2006. And the reason why I wanted an internship was previous to that, I had been a high school teacher. I had changed careers. I decided I wanted to get into video games. And I started working in retail after I was a teacher because I couldn't get a job. And then I ended up as a QA tester to get experience. And I learned if I actually want to work on the games themselves, I need to be a developer. And it's not easy to just, when you're not a programmer or an artist, to just jump in without any skill. So I decided I would go back to school. USC had a graduate program in game design. It was called interactive media at the time, but it had studied some game design tenets, and you would make student games. And I was like, I would love to learn how to make a game in an academic environment, and then use those connections to get an internship at a bigger studio, EA, Activision, whatever. So, long story short, I applied for many internships. I did not hear back from a lot of places. They're very competitive. And I had almost gotten one at a studio called Pandemic in West LA. They created the games Mercenaries, and they had worked on the first Star Wars Battlefronts back in the mid-2000s. And a friend and I, a classmate and I, were fighting for the same role. He ultimately got it. So I did not have an internship at the start of my second year of graduate school. And I decided I was going to go on Craigslist and apply for any job at a game developer in Los Angeles, and I would do anything. And that meant if there was a janitor job, I would do it. If there was a, administrative job, mailroom, I would do it just to get close. And sure enough, I saw an office assistant position open up on Craigslist for a gaming startup in West Los Angeles. I applied. And I got a respond back from the founder of the company. His name was Mark Merrill. And he said, hey, let's have you come in for an interview. He happened to be a USC alumni. So I was going to USC. So we connected on that level. And we started talking, had a good phone interview. They brought me in for an on-site, and I met himself and the other co-founder, Brandon Beck, also a USC alumni. And we chatted, and as they kind of described the vision of what they wanted Riot to be, and described the game they wanted to make, as they kind of described a free-to-play game that you can bring and play with your friends, multiplayer, a team of 5 versus a team of 5 on a map where you're fighting for position. And I said, sounds like a game called Dota. And they're like, yes, you're aware of Dota. I'm like, yeah, I play it. I play all the time with my friends. And they're like, oh my God, you understand Dota? I'm like, yeah. And they kind of described the business model. And I'm like, oh, this sounds like kind of Nexon. Sounds like MapleStory. Sounds like free-to-play Korean games. I'd done a lot of research on it at school. And I had played a game called Gunbound. It was a Worms clone, a Korean-developed Worms clone. And so I knew a lot about free-to-play online games just from playing some as a player. And I was like, oh, interesting. You're trying to take the free-to-play model, bring it to the United States in the West, and the West in general, and like have the game be available for free, have it be quality, but sell cosmetics. And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, if you pull that off, that sounds amazing. And they're like, wow, like you understand all that? I'm like, yeah. And they were just shocked because like it was such a niche. Dota was very niche at the time, and those types of business models were niche at the time in gaming. This is 2006, so like most people are still buying CDs, for your games, right? And when a game is launched, the developer doesn't update it when it's done. If they do, you have to pay for downloadable content, which in 2006 wasn't even really a thing. So it was an earlier time, and so we hit it off really well. And they said, "Look, you can't be an office manager because you're in school, but you get it. You understand the product we're trying to make. Would you like to be a design intern?" And I was like, absolutely. So that's how I got my internship. And it started with, I just helped around the office, did anything they needed me to do, and I got to help, design characters. So at that time, actually, I did help with design. So I won't say I was very good at it. A couple other interns who we brought on later, some of which were my friends, they were really good at it, but I did contribute. So I can't take a lot of credit, but Like, for example, in League of Legends, there's characters called Yordles. That's what Teemo is. So I named Yordles. That was like one of my big contributions.
Oh, nice.
I had a nightmare about Yoda and this and from Star Wars Episode 1, I had this book about Star Wars Episode 1, and there was whatever Yoda's race is, I don't know what it is, but there was a female, her name was Yaddle, and she was on the Jedi Council. So this dream about Yaddle and Yoda, and I woke up and I'm like, Yordle. And I came to work and I'm like, I think we need to name these things Yordle. And they're like, that's amazing. Let's name a Yordle. So there you go. I may not have invented Yordles, but I did name them. So that's one of my contributions.
I'm wondering, what kind of nightmares did you have with Yoda?
I don't know. I was a fever dream. It was a fever dream. I probably ate some food that made me sweat in the middle of the night. It's like, Yaddle. Why am I dreaming about Yaddle? I don't know. So yeah, that's kind of where it all happened. It all started with that, with the Craigslist post and a dogged
they were probably
attitude.
Surprised that someone who came to interview for office manager knew so much about games too.
I think honestly that was it. I think that was it. They were. I think they saw me as the target audience. Mm-hmm. You know, they're like, these are the types of products we're talking about. And look, Mark and Brandon are Mark is only a year older than me, and Brandon was a year younger than me. So, like, we're all in the same age range. We're all from Los Angeles, just different parts of Los Angeles. And alumni. Yeah, and so, like, there was a connection, right? We're all from LA. We all grew up in different parts of it. Which means, like, you know, our vernacular and kind of our points of reference and cultural, pop culture understanding was pretty similar. So, you know, it was just like talking to friends in a lot of ways. It's like-minded nerds is what I like to call it, and it felt cool. So I was just really happy to help, and didn't know what I was doing at all. And to be fair, neither did they. But we all were figuring it out as we went along. It was a good time.
And as the team was growing, you eventually switched to an employee. Did you feel any difference between being an intern versus employee?
No, I think to help set some of the timelines. So I was part-time. I would come in about 20 to 30 hours during the work week while I was in school, which is crazy. That's a lot of hours. I actually liked going to Riot more than I liked going to school at some points. And then in the summer, I worked 40, 50 hours. And so I done it, never felt like an intern. In fact, they even gave me a business card within a month. And it said design intern, but I had my own business card. I felt like an employee from the first day. Right? I felt included. I felt heard. And that was awesome. Because typically an intern doesn't do that type of stuff. You don't get to work on the game itself. You help. Mm-hmm. You just make sure other people have what they need. And they're just like, go solve this problem, or go do research over here, or, you know, we're trying to throw an office party. Can you help us curate decorations and food ordering so that we can have a nice celebration at the end of the week? You know, things like that. So I would do all that type of stuff. And I never felt expendable. I felt appreciated, and that was cool.
Is that really still cool. The case with the interns at Riot today, that they get to solve all these real problems rather than just like that's nice.
You dive in and you join your team, and you're doing work on that team. So if you're an artist and you're an intern on the skins team, you're drawing or contributing to the art that's going into the game live. If you're an engineer, you're solving engineering problems. You might own a service, which is like a little piece of technology or whatever, you know, or whatever needs to be done. Really, they'll find a project, and you'll go in and do it and get feedback from more veteran people. But it's not busy work. It's real work that will most likely be player facing. So it's cool.
That is very cool.
We had an earlier interview with a lady that works in structural engineering, and we were also talking about interns. And she mentioned, she gave kind of like advice for young people to be aware of the companies where they get their internships so that they don't end up being a lackey. So I'm wondering, why is it different? Is it that different companies have different approach and they value these interns differently? Why does Riot give so much freedom and creativity to interns versus other people just kind of like abuse the young people?
Yeah. So I'll answer two questions. Your first question, I think you answered it yourself. Different companies have placed different weight and value on it. Some people see interns as a means to an end. A lot of time interns are just free, and they're just there, and there's like an implicit, you got this opportunity to be here and be exposed to things for free, but in exchange, you do whatever I need you to do, and you are, you're just here to help me, right? Like there's that sort of
it's a little
attitude.
bit one-sided. Yeah.
It's one-sided, but the thought is, for some industries, that's the way it's done, and that's the way most people come up in a lot of ways. We all started at the bottom. You got to learn the way I learned, which is you get thrown in and you just take heat and you take criticism and you stomach through it, and the strongest survive. And I think that's a lot how entertainment, film, and TV work, right? Like you're not paid well, you're expendable, you're expendable because so many people desire jobs. So like those who make it are those who can have the fortitude, good or bad. And I actually don't really support it, but that is what it is, and that's how you make it through the system. And there are other places who go, look, interns are an opportunity to grow and create a new generation of contributors. And so let's find a way to empower them and use their intelligence to level up what we need to level up in. And you look at it as an investment in those people as the future of your company and your products. Because where's the innovation going to come from? It's going to be from the youth. The youth, the next generation, and I think there's investing in that keeps the companies focused on growing talent that's going to help them solve problems in the areas that they're solving. Because a lot of time the interns are coming from a different generation. They're coming with different perspectives and different frameworks and understandings, and that's valuable. I'm 38, so for me to go, this is what a player likes. I kind of get an idea of what a 38-year-old might like. But what's it like to be a 12-year-old in Indonesia playing on a mobile phone, or a 9-year-old playing in Canada, on a PlayStation? Like it's different, and there's different frames of references. So I think interns and younger developers help keep you fresh, and they will be the people who will solve problems in the long haul. So that to me is my opinion on it, and I think Riot sees it similar. And we've built our internship programs to be supportive like that. Now, when I was an intern, there was no program. It was just like, hey, Paul, I just got lucky. Hey, Paul, I need you to do this crap, but you can also do this other cool stuff too. And you're part of the team. And so that's the attitude was always you're part of the team. You're not lesser. And I think a lot of places are very hierarchical, and they make you feel lesser. So. That's my hot take on it, personally.
You were mentioning the timeline a little bit earlier. When you were looking for internship, it was the second year in the graduate program,
I started looking for internships in my first year. But there's usually a cycle. Like you apply in the fall, and then you get interviews in the spring, and then by summer you go and you do your internship. So it took me a while to learn that. So I didn't really get started applying until spring of my first year, and by then I was kind of out of cycle. And so I was just trying to find something, and it all worked out.
So when you were working at Riot as an intern, you were still going through school. Is there any point given that time you felt like you can just work for real, like you don't need to complete the degree?
Actually, they offered that. Within a year, they're like, "Would you like to join full time as an associate producer?" And I thought about it, but by the time I was at that point, I finished my second year of school. So I did my second year was my first year at Riot. My second year of grad school, first year at Riot. At the end of that first year, they're like, "Do you want to just come on? Do you just want to come on full time?" And I'm like, I seriously considered it, but I'm like, look, I've spent a lot of money on my 2 years of grad school. I probably should just finish it. So let's just keep going. And
how many years?
3 years.
Oh, okay.
It was an MFA. So my first 2 years were classes and coursework. My third year was really a thesis project. So I wanted to finish, and then my thesis project was a free-to-play Facebook game. That's what I was designing. And so I used my expertise from working with Riot and thinking through that stuff to do that. But at the same time, while I was working on that project, a classmate of mine wanted me to help him produce his thesis project. And he had a puzzle platform game that he wanted to make where you can rewind time. And it was called PB Winterbottom. And he asked if I would be his producer. And so I said, you know what? Yeah, I'll do it. I'll be your producer. So we built a student team. We started working on that game, and that game started to get traction. We submitted to some festivals. It got accepted. And then before you knew it, we were getting, we were pitching to major publishers, and we got funding to make that game. So I had a choice to stay at Riot or to go make my own game with my classmate. It was his project, but like we made it together and go do that on our own. And I took the opportunity to do that for 2 years. So at the end of in June of the end of like the school year of 2008, I had a choice to go join Riot or go start my own studio, and I chose to start my own studio with my friend, and we made that game. Riot let me work that summer. I stayed up until the end of August while we were trying to get the studio up and running, and then once we got the funding and once we hired the people, I left Riot, and we had a going away party and everything. It was nice. They treated me nice. Like, they again made an offer. Would you want to come work? And I'm like, I would, but I got the chance to do my own thing, just like you guys did. I got to take it. And they're like, of course, respect. And we kept in touch. We kept in touch the whole time. And so when I decided to, after we shipped, Winterbottom as a developer, we started a company called The Odd Gentleman. After shipping that game, took 14 months. It was very, very hard. I spent another 5 months with that company trying to figure out what our next project was going to be. We shipped another project for PlayStation Home, which was a very strange platform within PlayStation 3. I decided, I didn't want to start a business per se. I'm glad I got to. I want to be a video game producer and work on video games and not necessarily have to worry about the entrepreneurial side yet. So I left. I went back to Riot in the fall of 2010, and I've been back ever since. So 12 years at Riot, but had I never left, it would have been 14 years total. But I got to work at a startup that became a very big company, and I got to work at a startup that got to become a boutique indie studio. And they're still around. They're still making games, but just different paths.
Did you just call Riot when you finished with your studio?
I did. I one of the senior producers at Riot was my mentor. And so I talked to him first, and he's like, you should, I told him I was going to start applying for jobs, and he was like, you should, you're going to come back, right? You're going to apply to us. And I'm like, would you all have me? And he's like, come on.
It's like four offers already.
Why are you even questioning it? Like, put your application in. And so then he's like, you should email Mark. So I emailed Mark, and I'm like, hey, I think I'm going to leave The Odd Gentleman. I would love to apply to come back to Riot. And he was like, let's just go have dinner. And so then we had dinner. And he was like,
welcome home.
He says, come here. So we hugged and we caught up and stuff. And he's like, let's have you apply. So I went through the system, and it wasn't an easy interview. Like, I told him this. I'm like, I need you to interview me seriously. Like, I need you to put me through the paces, and I want to see how much I've grown since I've left. And it was a grueling 8-hour interview with people I have worked at, but they really, I was exhausted. And then we went out for dinner afterwards, and I almost fell asleep at the dinner because I was just like so tired. It was 8 hours straight of interviews. But then, I got the job, and I started back in October of 2010. Yeah.
I want to go back to the period before you decided that gaming is your future. You mentioned that you were a teacher.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering how was your life back then
before
as
that?
A teacher? Yeah.
Okay. So let's go way back. So I was not the best high school student. I had a good time, I had a lot of friends, but I wasn't really studious. So when it came down to applying for colleges, I got rejected by most of the colleges I applied to. And I had this awakening at like 17. I was like, oh, I just wasted high school. Like, I totally was focused on the wrong things. And so I went to junior college, and I said, you know what? I'm going to use this opportunity to kind of figure out what I want and get to a good school. So I went to junior college, and I thought I was going to be an English major, and because I really liked literature and reading and stuff like that. So I was prepping to be kind of a liberal arts English major in JC, but then I started taking some science classes. And in particular, I took a psychology class. And I was like, psychology is awesome. And so then I started doing research. And I'm like, you know what? Psychology is an interesting blend of human psyche and anthropology and social science plus hard science. So I'm like, this is interesting. So I decided I was going to be a psych major, and I was going to apply to the UC schools, the University of California. And they had a very clear system to transfer from a junior college, and it's called the IGETC program. And basically, it's a transfer agreement between local colleges and major universities. So it's basically a template. Take these classes for these majors, get a GPA of this amount, and you have a good shot. So I took that to heart, and I really buckled down. And it was almost like a game. I was like, okay, if I'm gonna win, then I just need to do this and take these classes in this order and get this fucking GPA and do it. And so I focused. I focused really hard for junior college, and I applied to 4 schools: Berkeley, UCLA, UC Irvine, and UC San Diego, and I got into all of them, which blew my mind, because I remember taking a college trip when I was a senior, and my dad and my mom, we drove up to all the schools. It was a rainy day. It was around Thanksgiving, so November of 1998, and we're going to these schools, and I'm like, I'm not going to get into these schools. Why are we even here? You know, this is a waste of my time. My grades aren't good enough. Why? And then that became my rallying call to be like, you know what? I'm going to try. And I got in to all of them, and I was blown away. I was like, wow, it worked. I did the work, and I got in. And it kind of it was real. I mean, I still have my acceptance letter to Berkeley, and I still every now and then look at it, because it was such a big moment to be like, I did it. I went from being a fuck up in high school to going to one of the best universities in the United States, because I just put my mind to it and stopped fucking around. And so I was really proud of that. That said, once I got to Berkeley and started doing psychology and started learning more about what I would do long term, I realized I didn't want to be a psychologist. I didn't want to be a counselor, because I didn't think I had the patience to do that. And so I was like, okay, I need another career. I love psychology, but I need something that I can do. And so at the time I was actually taking education classes too. So, and doing outreach in Oakland, and doing kind of after school program stuff through my classes at Berkeley. And I thought, you know what? I think I should be a teacher. I think I really enjoy learning. I really enjoy education. I enjoy explaining things to people and helping them understand it with the kids I was tutoring in the after school program. So I'm like, I'm going to go and I'm going to be a teacher, and let me do that. And then in the long term, I'll see if there are any other careers that I want. So I started to think through, what beyond teaching, what else I would do. And I started to research genetic counseling, which was a combination of science, understanding genetics and how genetics populate in generations of people, and psychology to help people talk through problems and marry the two. And so I thought, I'm going to apply for genetic counseling. In the meantime, I'm going to become a teacher as I go to school and get more training to become a genetic counselor. But I'll be a teacher in the short term, because at the time, you can be a substitute teacher for public schools, or you can go to a private school. So I went to a Catholic school growing up, so there were many alumni who went back and taught. So I was like, let me ask my Catholic school if they would allow me to teach or be a substitute teacher. And they actually had a position open in biology. So after I graduated, I applied for a job thinking I'd get a substitute teacher job. And they're like, we actually have a position in biology open. And I had taken a lot of science classes. And I was like, well, I'm down to teach it. So they gave me a trial, and I taught summer biology. And they liked what I did. So they offered me the full-time job for the rest of the school year, teaching, basic, not advanced, but just basic biology and an earth science class. So I became a teacher right out of college. And while I was doing that work, I was going to night school to kind of get my more hardcore science credentials shored up to apply for genetic counseling. And I think this is the spring of 2004 now. I graduated in 2003. I taught in the summer of 2003, fall of 2003. During spring of 2004, I'm back at junior college, taking chemistry 2, like on organic chemistry. I'm teaching all day. I just finished intense 2 years at Berkeley, stressing out over finals, and I was like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. I'm teaching all day. I'm going to school is everything, and I'm tired. I don't know if I want this anymore. And then the more I thought about genetic counseling, I was like, man, that's going to be a really hard job emotionally. And basically, you're telling parents, hey, your kid is going to be autistic, or hey, you're going to have a heart disease problem, and these are the various treatments that you can do. It's really heartbreaking work. And I'm like, I don't know emotionally if I have the fortitude to do that. I'm just so tired. I'm tired doing this. Imagine how tired I'll be doing that. I'm like, oh no, I don't know. I did
second time. Oh no.
No, I did. It was I did the playbook, right? I took the classes, I did the courses, I got in, I got the credentials, I got the job, and I wasn't happy. I wasn't happy. So I was talking to, a friend at the time, and I was talking about, I'm lost. I feel like I wasted, because I didn't really know what I wanted, I kind of picked what made sense, and here I am. And she said, well, what do you love more than anything else? And I'm like, honestly, video games. And she's like, really? I'm like, yeah, I can talk about every character in Castlevania and every single monster. I can recite it by heart. That's awesome. She's like, why don't you go make video games? I'm like, how does one do this?
Yeah. No objection, but how?
And so then, kind of similar thing. I'm like, let me go figure this out, right? Let me go break down how I do this. So I went to a seminar. It just so happened. So this is spring of 2004. I type in how to get into the games industry. Luckily, I live in LA. So I see a seminar that was happening. It was how to break into the games industry, happening in 2 weeks. I'm like, well, this is opportune. So in April, must have been March or April of 2004, I go to this seminar and I learn about the different jobs and roles in game development. There's game designers, there's game engineers, there's artists, but there's also marketing, publishing, communications, HR, QA. And I'm like, what's QA? Game testing. I'm like, oh, I can do that. And that's how I learned about that role. And decided, well, I live in LA. There are a lot of game companies here in LA. I'm going to apply. And so I started applying to game tester jobs. And look, that's a hard job to get. There's a lot of applicants. It's a temp job. There's a lot of competition. There's a lot of people willing to apply. So I didn't hear anything back. And so the school year was ending, and the teachers were like, "Are you coming back?" And I'm like, "Well, I kind of want to go to this video game thing." And they're like, "So, are you in? Or are you out?" I'm like, I'm out. I gotta go figure this out. And they're like, see you later. It's been nice having you. So I quit. Didn't have a job lined up. And then I was applying for QA. Nothing was up. I was living with my parents, so I had some safety net. I moved back home. So, I was lucky and fortunate to be able to do that. And I found a job doing retail. Selling games at an EB Games, which became a GameStop. And I was like, you know what? I'll take it. At least it's one step closer. And eventually I met a person who brought a bunch of games in to sell them. The games were shrink wrapped. He was wearing a t-shirt that I saw from a game convention called E3. And I got to go to E3 through the seminar. I met someone at that seminar who gave me a ticket. I was able to forge a way in and say, I teach a gaming class at my high school, and that allowed me to get in. So I saw these t-shirts at E3, and then I recognized this gentleman wearing that t-shirt, and I was like, excuse me, sir, did you go to E3? And he said, I did. I'm like, do you work at a video game company? He goes, yeah, I work for Vivendi Universal. And I go, are they hiring QA people? And he goes, they are. And I'm like, may I send you my resume? And he's like, of course. So he sent me the resume. He actually worked in QA. And so then I got a call back the next week, and they were doing mass hiring for the summer. And usually in QA, they hire in big batches to kind of help quality assure the games they're going to release in the fall for consoles. And so I there was like 20 people. They all had us come in for a day and play a game and write bugs. And so I wrote bugs for like 3 hours. They came and checked the bugs and they're like, okay, you got a job. You start Monday. And I was like, this was on a Friday. I'm like, I start Monday? And they're like, yeah, you start Monday. And I'm like, I got to quit my other job. And they're like, okay. And I'm like, oh my. So I literally called my manager. And I'm like, I'm quitting. I got a game tester job. I start Monday. And then he was happy for me because he was a cool dude and he was very supportive of those dreams. But his boss came. He's like, why are you going to be a game tester? Those guys get burnt out. And I was like, man, later. Like, no.
I got to get burned out to know if I would get burned out.
Yeah. No. This isn't my end state. No. I did what I needed to do. Adios. And that's where I got the game tester job. And I did that for a year. I learned a lot. In fact, some of my friends who I met in that game testing pod in my first game, they've gone on to do great things. One of them is the game director of Wild Rift, the League of Legends mobile game that we're in alpha in right now. So we started together, Vivendi, a guy named Ian Dallas. He's the game designer who designed a game called What Remains of Edith Finch, and he did a game called The Unfinished Wand. We started in QA together, and we're still friends to this day. And then there's a woman named Kristen Cox who we were in QA on, and she moved her way up, and now she's like a design director at Microsoft. So like a lot of people start in QA in earnest, and it's a fine, respectable field. So
I feel like to the young generation, QA is like, at least when I heard it, because when I was young, I also played a lot of video games, and my dad was telling me like, oh, at this rate, you can like even just make money of it. I'm like, what do you mean making money playing games? Like you just play the games and give people feedback. And I was like, oh, that's the greatest thing.
Right. Yeah. So, in doing that job, it demystified some of it. So while you do play games, right, you're playing the same game 8 hours a day for 3 to 4 months. Yeah. And so by the end of the second week, you're like, I don't want to play this anymore. Yeah. So, but I got used to it.
And also the state of the game.
Oh, like, God. It's brutal.
Yeah. It just breaks sometimes, and it's not like the end experience when you play a game.
I did like the early days when you get a broken build, because it's like, oh, this is easy today. I'm just bugging everything that's obvious, and there would be a race, like when we get like a fresh build. Yeah. Like, oh yeah, let's go get the crashes, and then we'd all be competing with each other.
You're like, wait, showstopper. You're like, nope, I already found it.
Got it. Got it. Or I found a variation of it, because you had a 10 bug a day quota, and if you didn't hit 10 bugs a day, you'd get a talking to. So the pressure was on. The pressure was on. And then my favorite game is not my favorite. I'm lying. But I like to say it. Barbie and the Magic of Pegasus. That was 3 months of soul draining testing. It's smashing one button all day long. I would put NPR in the background and just listen to it all day long while I'm doing it.
Trying to break it.
It was rough. Yeah.
I'm wondering. So you had your like where's my life going at a certain point. I'm wondering why it never occurred to you before that you should be working in games. Why you had to reach that point?
I just didn't think that was my calling. I figured I just didn't even think it was an option. I didn't even know it was an option. I didn't know much about it at all. I just played games. I just played them. I didn't really think too. I knew who all the developers were, but I didn't know how they went about their business. To me, teaching and psych, that was tangible because I knew those types of people and I worked with them. And I was like, well, I can kind of be like that because I knew what it looked like to me. Gaming was abstract. It was completely a mystery. So, and my mom used to actually say, she's like, why don't you do computers? That's what she used to tell me. My mom's from Panama, so she has an accent. Why don't you do computers? And I'm like, I'm not good at math. Is the answer. I'm not good at math, so why would I do computers? And I had a couple friends who were computer scientists who were doing CS, and it was all math. And I was like, I'm not good at math. I will never be good at programming, so I'm not even going to try it, right? And sometimes I thought, maybe I could be a writer, because I was an English major for a hot minute, and I know how to write. So I was like, maybe I can do that. But then I realized, ugh, if I don't like writing papers, how the hell am I going to be writing dialogue?
Writing stories. Yeah.
No, thanks. In fact, I actually tried out for creative writing at Berkeley, and I didn't get into a class. I was like, well, obviously
Nope.
I shouldn't. I'm not good enough for Berkeley's creative writing program. I guess I shouldn't even think about being a creative writer. So I think a lot of me was like, maybe I was trying things out and rejection, and my tolerance for the rejection would tell me if I should do it or not. And I think, to be honest, I think I what's the phrase? Underestimated myself. All things are learnable. I could have learned the program if I really wanted to. Probably just would have taken me longer. But like, it's totally knowable. You know, it's a mindset thing, and that came later. I think I had a fixed mindset for a very long time. I can't do this because I'm not good at this. Therefore, I should not even try. It's bullshit. You can figure out anything if you give yourself enough time and energy and patience. So it just took me a while. You know, it just took me a while to figure it out. And I also think I was influenced by authority figures. You know, I'd listen to someone who'd been there before and be like, oh, yeah, you know what you're talking about. You should do what you're saying. You know, it took me some time to figure out, I should do what I want. Mm-hmm. And really, when I made the leap to leave education, I was like, this is my chance. I'm still young. I don't have children. Like, I'm poor as shit. I can kind of live anywhere right now. Now's the time to be risky and try something. And so it all kind of worked out.
So Paul, you used to be an intern at Riot Games, and now you mentioned that Riot Games has a very strong internship program. Yeah. I'm wondering, what do you think are the most valuable things that people can get out of internship?
Valuable things?
Yeah.
What? Okay, got it.
What people can get out of it?
What do people get out of it? You mean the person being the intern?
Yes.
I think it's tangible work experience in a real life environment. You understand how people work together as human beings and collaborate, and what the expectations are, and what being a good team member looks like, what doing good work actually looks like, and getting paid for it, rewarded for a fair job. And you only experience that when you do it. I mean, one of the first jobs I ever had was I worked at a library, and my first paycheck for shelving books was really meaningful. So I was like, oh, they paid me for my time to do this. And I was kind of I wouldn't say shy, but I was like, when it came to doing professional work, I was very much like, what do you need me to do? And it was a library. It was super chill, but I was like so focused on doing a good job. It showed me that you perform well, you can get more opportunity. And I got upgraded to lead shelver, and it gave me a raise. And then I got updated to lead floor shelver, and that let me work the front desk. Nice. And so when I got to work the front desk, they bumped me from $9 to $13, which was a big deal. So anyways, the point is, like, while that was great, working a job like that, there's something about working in an office in a more formal corporate environment that you just don't get an understanding to until you're there. And I think an internship exposes you to what it's really like, so it's not abstract. Imagine being in college right now and you're like, I want to work at Facebook. What's that even feel like? What if you close your eyes, like, what's it look like? How do people interact with each other? Like, what, it's so abstract, so intangible. When you get an internship at a place like that, or any place, it demystifies it, and you go, oh, this is how people really work. So that's what I think is the number one value. And the two is just skill sets and building capabilities that you need to succeed in those environments. You learn how to communicate and ask for help and do things and help each other out. And that's also important, how to be a team player, collaborative, stuff like that.
And in the time when you're at Riot, you were in different departments. Like you were mentioning a little bit earlier, in the beginning, you also helped design Champion. You contributed, and then there's also you're in the skins department. There's also in-game events where and then there's also distributing all these contents. Like, what do these different departments give you in terms of like experience, like working in these different departments?
Okay, so you're asking me on the different teams I've worked at in Riot in the past 10 years, what are the different things I learned?
Yeah, kind of.
From the different experiences. So each team that I was on, and I was on, I'd say I was on a different team every 2 to 3 years. on League of Legends. And the way a game can be structured is, for a game like League of Legends, is it's actually many teams working together. There's not one team that owns the whole game. It's several teams all working together under one umbrella. So there may be a team working on gameplay. There may be a team working on cosmetics. There may be a team working on ranked play. There may be a team working on fair matchmaking. And all of them are different software systems or pieces of the game that need to be built and connected together. So for 3 years I worked on Champions, which is gameplay. So in addition to coming up with being on a team where the humans would come up with new game mechanics, they'd also come up with the art and the narrative and the visual representations of the character in game and at a game. So that's kind of a hybrid creative and tech team. So I learned how to work with creatives, and what I mean by that is, what does a concept artist need to be successful and to deliver something from scratch on time? What does it mean for a game designer to do that? What does it mean for an animator to do that? I learned about all the different roles and how they all need to come together to make something on a timeline and do it well and quality. If you look at the champions of League of Legends from fall 2010 to fall 2013, there's an increase in quality as we figured out how to do it. We had some good ones and we had some bad ones. And ultimately I had to learn the hard way. So for every Skarner we made, we had a Lucian or a Yasuo or a Jinx, and we learned a lot from each of those characters. So I learned how to work with creatives and kind of abstract game design in that team. When I joined the events team, it was much more about publishing and advertising to the player base. Here's what's coming up for Christmas. Here's what's coming up for Halloween. And how do I work with the different content teams to package all of our stuff together to make an event? And so it was a lot of cross-team work. So if I worked on the champion, I was one team. When I was working on events, I had to work with several teams to get things done. And so being the communicator between those teams, going, here's our date, here's what we need from you, let's check in once a week, make sure we're good, everyone's happy, we need to get it in by this date so that we can make this patch before the holidays, etc., etc., etc. There's that. So I did that for 2 years, and then I joined the skins team. We called it just new monetization team. And what I mean by that is new things you can make so that new people can buy things. So I worked on skins, and this other team I was on was more of an R&D team, and we came up with in-game emotes for League of Legends. So the little stickers that pop up above your head, where people are like this, like our team came up with that. And so in addition to coming up with what those are, well, how do you equip them, and what type of interface do you need to use them in game, and how many should you have in time? When you're outside of the game, how do you equip them? How do you buy them? How do you drag them? Like, we had to figure out all that stuff. So I worked on that. On the skins team, I produced a lot of skins. So I worked with mostly artists, and narrative and audio to make skins like Godfist Lee Sin and Darkstar Thresh, so legendary skins in League of Legends. So I did that. And then I got the opportunity to lead the store team for League. They needed a new producer to take it over, and it's very much a technical team, like engineering. And I had a chance to go work on that or work on another project at Riot, and I decided, I actually think working on the engineering team would be really good for my development to better understand how engineers work. Because up to that point, I'd mostly worked with creatives and creative type of developers. So I was like, engineering just sounds intimidating to me. Like I said, it goes back to when I was in high school.
The computers and math.
Yeah, I don't get it. And so I joined this team because I had a reputation for being able to help teams organize and get things done and create a positive environment. So this team had low morale. And so I kind of helped them figure out, here's who we are, here's what we're doing, here's why we're important, and here's the things we got to do. So I helped kind of rebuild them. And in the process, I learned a lot about how engineers work. And to be honest, I love working with engineers. Working with engineers is the best. It is it's in my opinion, it is you give an engineer a very clear goal and very clear acceptance criteria, and they'll be like, Let me figure it out. And it's the best. When you're working in creative content, it can get very subjective.
Yeah.
This thing looks really cool. Well, I don't think it's cool. Why don't you think it's cool? Because I think these things are cool. Well, I think these things are cool. Well, who's more right, you or me? Don't know. We could both be wrong. All right? And so there's a lot of like subjective ambiguity in creative work. So you have to, if you're going to do creative work, you need to have a very clear opinion and be able to drive that and help get a team rallied. And it's good work. It's exhausting. It's exhausting. I find working with engineers is a little more relaxed. It's still hard work, right? Like breaking down requirements of like how to make this software work at scale and have this microservice talk to this microservice in a way where it doesn't blow up due to latency or whatever. It's complicated stuff. But at the end of the day, I can go to an engineer and be like, please explain like I'm 5 years old how these things work. And they'll go and they'll draw boxes and they'll tell me this system works on this system. This is what the system kind of does. And like, I don't know all the details, but I get it enough to be like, I see what you're saying. We should invest here. We should invest here. What do you think? And they're like, yeah. And it's just this, I find it to be very refreshing. So
I find it that's me when Andre's talking about complicated problems at work, and I'm like, and he would say, I get it. You're saying this. I'm like, am I? I guess. I guess so.
Yep.
Yeah.
That said, like, I still struggle with a lot of the vocabulary, and I ask a lot of dumb questions. But I think to be a successful producer, you have to be comfortable with asking dumb questions and not taking it personally. You know, and I found that more than likely people are willing to help and explain it, and as long as you're willing to learn, it's all knowable. So
when you mentioned the arguments between creative people, like what's cool and what's not, how do you actually settle those disputes? Like who makes the decision?
Oh no, this is good. I go, ultimately it's what our players think is cool. So we have something, we don't agree on it, it's okay. Well, let's take version A, version B, and let's go do a player survey. Let's let the players tell us what they think is cool. And if that data comes back and we gotta see it, we're like, they're responding to this, we can kind of go, I think we should go with this, it'll be more resonant. Sometimes it'll be like, well, I still think it's not good enough, and then someone needs to make a call. And so usually at that point, as a team leader, I'd be like, I hear your opinion. This is a choice that we're going to make. Here's why we're going to make it. Can you get behind that? And if you can't, then hold on, my phone is ringing. If you can't,
suspense.
Is that going to make it? Are you not going to be energized to be on this team anymore? Is this going to is this so fundamental that you're not going to be able to function? And most of the time they're like, no, I just don't think it's cool. And I'm like, well, cool. Well, look, if it ends up to not be cool and not resonate, that's on me. You know, you did your job by fighting for what you thought creatively was right. Thank you. It's on us now. Like, it's on me as a decision maker or whoever the decision maker is, and we own it. And if the result is good, hey, we got there. If the result is not good, well, then we need to learn from it. Maybe we should have listened to that other person, you know, or done more research, and that's a learning lesson. So I've had situations where I had to get into very passionate arguments with artists on skins about what we should make and what not. And in some cases, they've convinced me to take a different direction, and they were right. And there's been times where I'm like, as a product person, as a player, this makes more sense. And while I appreciate your opinion on that, I think this is better for this audience, and I need you to trust me on it. And if you can't, I understand, but like ultimately, it's what I'm going to do. And usually, people get behind it, but it can get tense. It can get. So as a producer, you need to have the tools to be able to disarm that in a neutral way. Because it's not. No one is trying to be mean on purpose. They're just trying to passionately get their point across. Some people are better at communicating it than others. So for me, it's very much about creating a situation where you can hear people out and then help them figure out, you know, to get on board or hear them out if they're not on board, and just through your behavior, make sure that you know that you at least listened to them and considered it.
You said
most people just want to be heard, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, you said that in some cases you let the players decide through a survey. I'm wondering, is there something as A/B testing happening in games?
Yeah, all the time. Absolutely, all the time. Especially in mobile games, they'll put out a version of the interface to one group of players, and they'll put another version out to another group of players, and then they'll go, what behaviors are they happening, and go for it. You know, I think that gets trickier with like more influential creative decisions, like a character. Like Marvel doesn't go, let's have Spider-Man A and Spider-Man B and see which. Like, no, you make a call which is the right Spider-Man, and you commit. Because like, yeah, you gotta have an opinion as a creative, and you gotta have faith that you're making a creative shot. Because every creative shot is a risk, but you gotta have guts to make that call. And so that's on you as the developer or the creative team or creative director or whoever. Someone's got to make a gut call. You can't let the data drive all your creative. That's my philosophy. Some people do let the data drive the creative, and it's worked out fine for them. But my thought is, like a good chef. Like a good chef will know what seasoning they need to do to escalate the dish because they've been practicing by cooking and tasting and knowing, I just don't mix those two things because it's just going to have a bad taste. Or I could elevate it if I add this, you know, and that comes with doing that work for a long time.
I think skins is probably the most favorite thing when I play League of Legends, and a lot of the players as well. You worked on these skin lines. Is there anyone that like particularly stood out in the process of the creation?
Godfist Lee Sin was one of my favorite skins to make from scratch. And the reason why is because we as a team needed to make a legendary skin for him. We didn't know what to make. And so through a process of kind of creative pitching, the team generated a lot of ideas, and we were and we had a choice between two options. And we sat there in a room, and this is not even pictures, these are words. It could be this or this, just words. And we kind of sat there and went, what is the impact if we went in this creative direction? What's the impact if we went in this creative direction? And one direction was cool, but I'm like, does this feel like you're transforming the character into an alternate version of themselves? Because that's what we were trying to do with the legendary skin. It needs to go above and beyond. It needs to almost feel like you're like a deeper variation of the character itself. It's a transformation. Does this feel like a transformation or an extension? And they're like, that feels like an extension. That feels like a transformation. I'm like, that's the one we need to do. And that's how we picked Godfist. It was either going to be like literally, kind of an ascended immortal being that through training became a god, right? Versus like basically a variation of Street Fighter, which was dope. It looked great. It could have been amazing. We were like, do you want to play Ryu or do you want to play Ryu who now became a god? And I was like, well, I want to play Ryu, god. I'm like, and that became the line. It was Lee Sin is a god. And that was the creative one-liner. And I'm like, every drawing, every piece of visual effects, every piece of audio needs to make you feel like a god experientially. So from the way we looked at the animations, from the way that we looked at the body shape and the way the colors, it had to be like a god, like you had transformed into something. And the team took that line and figured it out. Like, I wasn't in there going, make it gold. Like, they were the ones who came up with it. Because every day I just asked them, what's the mission? Lee Sin is a god. Does it look like it? No. Do you want to do that? They'd be like, no, I don't. I'm like, then go do it again. And that, like, they did it. They policed it themselves. Right? And that, to me, like, was the culmination of, with a clear goal and a clear vision, the team is unlocked. And it was so much fun to make that skin.
Nice. I'm wondering if you were to give some, because we talk about a lot of things I think young people can probably take inspiration into, like really like knowing yourself, finding that you're following your dreams, knowing what to do, and also recognizing like these are the moments when you make mistake, but don't be afraid to make them. But if you were to give any practical advice, like an advice for young people to really, who wants to get into gaming industry, what would that be?
I would say, what do you really want? Like, what are the things that motivate you? What type of work motivates you? Is it creative work? Do you want to help come up with the ideas of what the game is or what the characters are? Because then you can start building skills around that and forming opinions on how to do that and reading and training to do that. If it's, I just want to be in games, or you can be in marketing, you can be in, like, you kind of have to pick a lane early, and because then each of those, think of it like an RPG, right? You have your archer, you have your wizard, you have your fighter. They all have different skill trees. They all have different armor. They all have different weapons. And you can become good at a lot of them, but like if you commit to one and excel, you become a master. And so for me, it's like figuring out what spec do you want to do? Which role do you want to go down? Because the training to be a good QA person is different from the training to be a great writer, from being a great artist, from being a producer. They're all different. So it's really think through fundamentally, what do you value in what you want to do? What are the things that would make you happy to do? Not just like, oh, I'm happy doing this. Like, fundamentally, you can't live without. Like, I call it, what are your table stakes? Like, do you want to have ultimate decision making? Do you want to make the final call? Do you want to just support people? Do you want to just make sure people are happy? You know, you go into HR, right? Become a HR manager and help them unlock themselves. Like, there are different things you want, but you have to think through what are the things that you value as a human that will really satisfy you. And when you look back in your career 40 years from now, you're like, I accomplished this, or I was able to help in this way. I think that's the thing to spend time thinking about. And I know it sounds abstract, but I meet so many people who just don't know. And they're like, I'm just kind of figuring it out. And I'm like, well, have you thought about what you really, really want? They're not really. And I'm like, well, start now. What's stopping you now? Right? I had a chance to potentially leave Riot a couple years ago between jobs. And I actually sat down my wife. My wife is very logical and she's amazing. And I was like, I'm struggling. Like, I love Riot, but like, I kind of want to try something in this type of realm. And we just did this analysis. And I'm like, well, what am I really looking for? I want to work on this type of thing. I want to work on, these types of decisions. I want to grow in these types of skills. And I kind of like made a matrix. And I was like, oh, I can absolutely continue to do this at Riot and be happy. I should go find this type of role and see if I can do that here. And I found it, and so like because I was able to clearly articulate what was important to me and what things I want to learn and grow in and who the types of people I wanted to work with and what types of problems I want to solve, I was able to identify like my next steps. So it's not something you ever really stop doing. I think you need to continually evaluate it as you go along your journey. But it starts with a real good self-awareness that can be taught and developed of what do you need to feel satisfied. And some people are like, I just want to make a lot of money. And you're like, cool, you don't need to be happy then. You can go make a job that makes a lot of money and get happiness elsewhere. So go be like a financial advisor for Morgan Stanley. Like that's nothing wrong with that. Like go for it. But you need to really think through what's important to me. Money, time, decision making, creativity, and then and kind of work your way backwards from there.
But I'm still wondering, like, if we could brainstorm a little bit. Because, like, when I was growing up, and the only reason why I went to an IT college was because I like to play games. And because I like to play games, I knew a little bit about computers. I knew nothing else about how the real world works. Yeah. But I'm still thinking, from your perspective, there are many people who will be listening to this, and they're like, I like playing games. Yeah. But how do they actually discover which part of the game-making process they like?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I think it's research. It's listening and talking to the different participants. So it's education for going, well, how does a game get made? And listening through all the different roles and being like, oh, this one sounds cool or this one doesn't. Because it's so broad. There's so many roles in game development. Just like in movie making or TV making, there's tons of roles. You can be a gaffer. You can be an editor. You can be an audio technician. You can be a craft services person. You can be a security guard. There's so many things. I think people need to take the time to go, what does it actually mean to create this thing? And what are the roles involved in it? And that comes with research. Like, where I started was very much, how do games even get made? And that's where I went to that seminar, And I think there's you need to self-educate a bit on what it is you want. Because maybe you just like the idea of it. But when you understand it, you go, I don't really like it at all. If I think of my false starts, I never thought through, what does it actually mean to do that job? Like, if I had just asked myself when I was a sophomore in college, what does a genetic counselor actually do minute to minute? Do I want to do that? I might have said no, but I never stopped. I just went for it. I was like, oh, it'll be fine. If I had just taken 10 minutes and gone, do I really want to break bad news to people about how their children are going to have disabilities for the rest of their lives? And here's the way you deal with it. Do I want to do that every day for the next 50 years? Maybe the answer would have been yes, then go for it. If the answer is, I don't think so, you didn't think hard enough. You know? Mm-hmm. So that's my thought. Like, really think it through. I think I would tell my younger self, just don't allow yourself to be ignorant of what it actually means to do that job. I used to think, I don't want to take business. I don't like business classes. Man. Right? It's not interesting. I kick myself. I've never taken a business class at all. My job is business now, and I love it. And I'm like, I was so closed off to the idea of understanding how economics work that I made it hard for myself in the future. So you have to really like open up and go, why don't I like this? What don't I like this? Is it a self-confidence issue? Is it truly like just truly make me retch when I think about it? Or do I just not understand it?
Or maybe just stereotype, right?
Or stereotyping. And I think a big lesson I learned over time, and a good book for this is Growth Mindset, is that like everything is learnable. Everything, given time and effort, you can understand. There's nothing that's impossible. It's really the mindset to tell yourself, okay, what do I need to do to understand this versus I'm just bad at this, stop. You know? And I think I would tell young people to really push themselves to not just stop when it gets hard, to really think through what it is that you want and what it is you think the job is. So many people ask me on LinkedIn, what's it mean to be a product manager? And I'm going to do an FAQ because I get it enough.
Too much. Yeah.
This is what it is and this is what it isn't. I like that. What do you like about it? I like making decisions. And you're like, is that all? Is that what? Is that what? Does a company want to give you a $5 million budget because you like making decisions? You know, like what are you going to do to drive value for that company? Because that's what a product manager does. Value for the customer, value for the company. And they're like, oh, that sounds like business. And you're like, yes, should do some research. And I don't mean to be a jerk about it. It just reminds me of my younger self. Take some time and learn.
Yeah, I think you definitely delivered on the research part. Like many people will have a better idea about what a producer does. But I'm still wondering if somebody listens to this and they say like, yeah, I want to be like Paul. What is something that they can do like right now to test if they would actually be good at that job? Can they start their own
Organize
game
a project. Organize a project. So, for example, I'll give you an example. I recently had to get some landscaping done at my house. It was overgrown because I cut my own grass and I do all that stuff. But like overall, there's all these bushes all over my place, and it's huge. And I'm like, okay, so I can choose to go do that myself, or I can choose to hire someone to go do this. All right, let me go clearly define what I want, how I want it to look. Let me go get quotes from 3 different people to figure out how much it's going to cost. What am I willing to pay? What am I not willing to pay? And then let's do the exploration. And then once I hire someone, how do I keep them accountable to doing it to the quality that I want? And how do I give them the feedback to let them know I want this, not this, right? It's project management. I had to tell this landscaper, I want these type of plants in this order. I want this type of stuff in this deal versus going to him going, I don't know, make it look cool, and then seeing what he does and being unhappy with it. Right? So I think like truly defining like what a project and what you want the outcome to be can give you some of that fundamental skills, because you have to talk to people, you have to communicate expectations, you have to budget, you have to give it a timeline. Stuff like that is how you can learn some of the actions that you do abstractly. So managing a project or like organizing something, organize a group to go do a thing, protest or, a bake sale or birthday party, like outing. All that stuff. Like that's all project management, production type of stuff.
Right. Okay. You heard it here first, guys. If you want to get into game producer, go find some bushes.
Find some
go manage a landscape project. Go to a friend and be like, hey, what's something you're trying to get done? Let me help plan it for you. Right?
Even better.
That's your first customer, right?
Get them to owe you.
and then it'll test your friendship. If you don't get it right, what did you do or not do to get your customers requirements, right?
Right.
That's nice. That's good advice, I think. And thanks so much, Paul, for coming to our podcast. It's been such a wonderful, just like 1.5 hour listening to you talk about your journey. It's really nice. I really love it. Yeah.
It's a true story.
Yeah, definitely true story.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.